Welcome back, focused learners, to another deep dive on the Explainer. Today, we're unpacking the rich, mythic journey of one of the absolute greatest heroes in modern fiction, Aragorn, from J.R.R. Tolkien's Legendarium. We're going to walk through his entire character arc to uncover a really fascinating paradox. We want to find out exactly why a man's deep reluctance and extreme patience to rule is exactly what made him fantasy's greatest king.
Let's kick things off with this iconic line from Bilbo Baggins's poem, because it perfectly sets up the core mystery we're looking at today. He is a man absolutely destined to rule. He carries the blood of ancient kings, and yet he spent decades actively living out in the wilderness, completely avoiding his throne. Why on earth would the rightful heir to the kingdoms of men choose the brutal life of an outcast rather than just claiming his birthright on day one? Well, to understand that, we actually have to jump all the way back to the very beginning.
Section 1. The Heir in Hiding, a Secret Lineage in Rivendell.
So, right off the bat, we need to remember Aragorn wasn't just some regular guy, right? He was a Dunedain. This means he's a direct descendant of the royal line that started with Elros, who was the half-elven brother of Elrond. Because of this incredibly rare, semi-divine ancestry, and, the massive burden of his ancestor Isildur's legacy, Aragorn had to be heavily protected. When his father was killed, Aragorn was brought to Rivendell. He was literally just 2 years old. As we see in Tolkien's appendices, he was raised in total secrecy by Elrond and given the name Istel, which translates to hope. For years, he was kept completely in the dark about his true royal identity until Elrond felt he was mentally and physically tough enough to handle that kind of pressure at 20 years old.
Section 2. Driven by Love, the Elven Ultimatum.
Okay, so picture this. Aragorn hits 20, he finally learns his true name and lineage, and almost immediately after, he's walking in the woods of Rivendell and runs into Arwen. Now, she'd been away in Lothlorien for a long time, and even though she is literally thousands of years older than him, Aragorn is instantly smitten. But he knows he has a ton of proving to do, so he leaves Rivendell. For the next 29 years, he journeys out into the wild, living the unbelievably grueling life of a ranger, which is when he gets the nickname Strider. He's out there protecting the North, fighting the forces of darkness in complete secrecy, and just undergoing massive personal growth. It isn't until he's 49 years old that he finally reunites with Arwen and Lorien, and that's when they actually pledge themselves to one another.
But here's where things get super interesting. Elrond basically hands Aragorn the ultimate ultimatum. Aragorn absolutely must become king of both Gondor and Arnor if he wants to marry Arwen. His reasoning was that if she was going to give up her elvish immortality just to die like a mortal human, it definitely wasn't going to be for just some wandering ranger. So Aragorn's pursuit of kingship became a strict condition of his marriage. It turned his quest into a matter of profound spiritual and romantic devotion, which is what the sources actually referred to as a spiritually hygienic motivation.
And that brings us to a really fascinating question, one that defines a lot of the core tension within the Fellowship. Why was Aragorn so much less tempted by the One Ring than Boromir was? Think about it. Both were great men of Gondor, but their reactions to the promise of ultimate power couldn't have been more different.
Section 3. Resisting the Ring's Temptation. Power versus Destiny.
This comparison here is just brilliant. Looking at Boromir, you've got a guy raised by Denethor, the steward of Gondor. His entire endgame was ascending to that specific role. His whole identity was tied up in his military might and being a visible, celebrated leader. Boromir was motivated by power, which is exactly why the ring's promise of victory corrupted him so easily. Then you look at Aragorn. He's driven by pure love and a deep sense of duty to his destiny. Plus, he had a massive advantage with his elvish upbringing. Gandalf and Elrond had basically hammered it into his head how badly his ancestor Isildur messed up when he tried to wield the ring's egocentric power. Aragorn's entire foundation was built on service, making him uniquely bulletproof against the ring's whispers.
Section 4. The Reluctant King, Book versus Movie Adaptations.
Now, this is a distinction that trips a lot of people up. If you're coming from Peter Jackson's movies, you're used to an Aragorn filled with self-doubt. In the films, he actively shrinks away from his role because he's terrified of repeating Isildur's catastrophic failures. And honestly, it was a brilliant cinematic choice. It gives him a super relatable arc where he has to overcome his own insecurities. But in Tolkien's original books, totally different story. Book Aragorn doesn't lack confidence at all. He is completely aware of his destiny and is emotionally prepared for it from day one. His reluctance doesn't come from fear, it comes from profound humility. He's strategically waiting for the exact right moment to claim the throne so he doesn't spark a civil war among his own people.
Actually, to really drive this point home, in the novels, Aragorn never shirks his duty. The shards of Narsil are reforged into his legendary sword, Andúril, the Flame of the West, before the Fellowship even leaves Rivendell. He carries it through the whole journey as this constant, gleaming symbol of his readiness. He doesn't need Elrond to dramatically show up and hand it to him in the third act. He's had it the entire time. He just chose patience over a hasty, forceful conquest.
Section 5. Hands of a Healer. The Germanic Mythic Influence.
Okay, let's talk about sacral kingship. It's this incredibly cool academic concept that completely redefines how we look at Aragorn's path to the throne. Tolkien, being the massive history and language scholar that he was, grounded a ton of his fantasy in real-world, pre-Christian Germanic mythology. In those ancient traditions, it wasn't enough to just say, hey, I have royal blood. A true king had to physically prove he had divine favor by performing supernatural feats. Specifically, the literal ability to heal his broken people.
When you look at the actual requirements for a sacral king, Aragorn checks every single box, systematically. He's got the semi-divine ancestry, through Elros, check. He obviously has immense success in battle. We're talking Helm's Deep, surviving the Paths of the Dead, and leading the absolute madness at the Black Gate. Check. He approaches everything with utter humility. But the real clincher? That third point right there, the healing touch.
Now, what's really amazing about this is that Tolkien literally uses a common weed to prove Aragorn's divine right to rule. The plant, athelas, which most people just called kingsfoil, was completely dismissed by the common folk as having basically zero value. But when it's in the hands of the rightful king, it suddenly unlocks these incredible restorative properties. Aragorn isn't casting some sort of crazy elvish magic to heal Frodo, Faramir, or Éowyn. He just uses athelas, combined with his own innate royal virtue. For the people of Gondor, his medical success is the actual, tangible proof that he is their king.
There's this beautiful moment where the old lore master in the House of Healing recites, "The hands of the king are the hands of a healer, and so shall the rightful king be known." I just love how perfectly this bridges Aragorn's transition. He goes from being this rugged, dangerous warrior bringing death to his enemies to becoming a life-giving, restorative monarch who's there to heal a broken, decaying world.
Section 6. Earning the Crown. The Power of Servant Leadership.
Think about this. Aragorn just helped save the city of Minas Tirith in one of the most epic battles in recorded history. And what does he do? He literally sets up his camp outside the city walls. He tells the leaders, "I do not yet claim to command any man." Even then, he utterly refuses to force his way onto the throne while the larger war with Sauron is still up in the air. He knows his bloodline makes him eligible, sure, but he insists on being accepted by the people organically. It's just the ultimate display of humility.
Throughout his entire life, we just see this continuous masterclass in self-sacrifice. He willingly lived as a despised outcast in the north for decades just to protect the completely oblivious hobbits of the Shire. During the main quest, he constantly puts his own burning desire to go to Gondor on the back burner so he can help Frodo and keep the Fellowship safe. And then, beautifully, after a long, legendary reign as king, he doesn't cling to life like the corrupted kings of old. He willingly surrenders his life when his time comes. He just lets go, cementing his status forever as the ultimate servant leader.
So, what's his reward for a literal lifetime of putting everyone else first? It comes in the form of the Scepter of Numenor. This is a silver rod originally brought over from Numenor, and it served as the chief token of royalty for the North Kingdom. Elrond had kept it tucked away safely in Rivendell for generations. It is only when Aragorn officially earns his dual kingship over both Gondor and Arnor, fulfilling every single condition set before him, that Elrond finally hands the scepter over.
So the crucial point we need to take away from all this is how Aragorn absolutely shatters the standard fantasy rules. He completely subverts that classic Chosen One trope. In so many stories, a hero finds out their royalty and bam, they immediately take charge. For Aragorn, having the royal bloodline just got his foot in the door. It made him eligible. It was his deep humility, his decades of grueling service out in the wild, and his pure character that actually made him King Elessar. He didn't just walk in and demand it because of a birthright. He bled for it, and he earned it through sacrifice.
True power and lasting peace come precisely from the initial refusal of it. Aragorn didn't want the crown for his own glory. And you know, that very reluctance, paired with his boundless, lifelong devotion to his people, is exactly why he was the only one truly worthy to wear it. It really makes you wonder, looking at our own world, are the best leaders the ones who aggressively chase power, or the ones who only accept it as a heavy, necessary duty? Thanks for hanging out with us for this explainer, guys. Keep learning, and we'll catch you in the next one.